Greetings, I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Sd.Kfz 263 6-rad armoured car. This one, as you can probably see, has a radio antenna. It's kind of hard to miss. This is a 72nd scale plastic model from First to Fight, which is a Polish company. That explains all of the words I can't read on the box. The back of the box has a basic painting guide where they've listed both Vallejo and Hataka paints, as well as an exploded diagram which will serve as instructions. No instructions are included inside the box, but there is a version of the same instructions you see on the box on their website. I have no idea how to say the name, but there is a link in the description below. Inside the box we find a Ziploc baggie filled with plastic, decals, and a little bit of metal. There are 3 sprues moulded in a grey plastic, and for the most part these are pretty decent, though there are of course mould lines, some of which are a bit heavy. There's also some pretty hefty flash, mostly along the left side of the upper hull. Other than that, the parts are moulded nice and neatly, and there's a decent amount of detail. I'm pretty sure that these are intended as wargaming kits. I think wrzesien 1939, which I'm absolutely saying wrong, is the name of the game system or rule set. I've clearly never played it and don't know anything about it, but I suspect that you could use any kits in this scale with it. I am here to talk about this kit though, so the parts do look pretty nice and the detail is fairly good. It does seem like it's simplified to some degree, but that is normal, especially for gaming models. 6-rads like this don't usually seem to be covered in tiny bits and pieces of detail anyway, so the relatively low number of parts in this kit seems reasonable, and I don't feel like it's been oversimplified. Though I will say that the radio antenna is relatively simple. I imagine that there are models of this kit where that's quite fiddly, and this is, but as you'll see later, it's not too bad, and the parts are still pretty nice and fine. This gets a thumbs up from me. As the box shows us, the gun for this model is metal, and that's pretty cool, though it is absolutely tiny. There's a plastic gun on the sprue as well, but unfortunately that part was broken. Not by me, it was broken when I got it. I guess that's not really worth worrying about too much when you've got a metal barrel. A simple decal sheet is included. There's 3 crosses and some license plate, and I guess that's about all you really need for one of these. They look fine, so I'm not anticipating any problems with them. The way this model is packaged was kind of interesting. We saw the box that the kit came in, that's pretty normal. The unusual thing is that it comes with a magazine, and I thought that was pretty cool. Of course, I can't read a word of it, but that's okay. It does include some pictures, and those can be understood in any language. The back cover shows us some gaming stuff for the game, which I already tried to say once, and probably won't do again. So that's kind of cool. I mean, probably not really a selling point if you don't speak Polish, but it's still cool. Anyway, let's get to the gluing together of bits of plastic, starting with the hull. Removing the big chunk of flash from the upper hull part was a bit of work, but I suppose it could have been worse. The location of it was mostly flat surfaces, so it's not the hardest thing to deal with. Once both parts are cleaned up, they can be put together. I used plenty of glue and some pressure, and the hull goes together pretty well. It's not totally perfect and there are some small gaps, so a little bit of extra cleanup work might be needed here. I guess it just depends on how much you care about these kind of gaps in your gaming models. Some people do, some people don't. Wheels come next. It took a fair bit of time to remove the mould lines from these, but it's nothing too tricky. The rear wheels are made up of 2 parts because there's 2 tyres, and they go together like so. As you can see, the rims should angle in towards each other. When you've got all 4 wheel sets glued together, they can go onto the little axle-y bits. This is just about as easy as it looks. There's not much play in these parts, but you may still need to nudge them just a bit so they're nice and straight. Simple enough. The front wheels come next, which is probably really obvious. Like the other wheels, these don't have a lot of play to them, but they also might need to be nudged a bit so they sit nice and straight. That assembly is pretty simple, and look, the vehicle is almost entirely together already. Next, it's turret time, and there's not much to this either. I glued the turret bottom into place. It has a little pin in there, as well as the guides around the edge, to make sure that it all goes together properly. I had to apply a good bit of pressure to get this together, but nothing too dramatic. I also accidentally got glue on the side of the turret and put my finger in it. Always annoying when that happens. Definitely try to avoid it, though you can fix it later if you sand or scrape the prints off. Of course, it doesn't look perfect and I'll have to do a bit more work on this before painting. Anyway, the front of the turret comes next, and the keying guides this into place nice and neatly, though it looks to me like the lower part of the front plate isn't quite long enough. The gap along the bottom doesn't seem like it should be there. Moving along, I add the gun, and I am of course using the metal one. The plastic one would have been a good option too if it were intact. It is kind of hard to see, but the end of the gun that should be facing outwards, the shooty end, has a tiny little hole in it, so be sure to glue it around the right way. A little nudging so that it's mounted straight, and there we have it. A gun in the turret, which is exactly where we wanted. Before attaching the turret, I figured adding the rest of the hull details would be a good idea, just to save from knocking that gun out of place or something like that. I attach the front left mudguard. There are 2 holes and corresponding nubs to guide this into place, so it's pretty simple to install, though it does easily slip out of place if you apply too much pressure. I apply extra glue on the inside of this where the part joins the hull to avoid making too much of a mess with the glue. The rear mudguard comes next, and it's pretty much installed in the same way. It's pretty simple. It just takes a bit of care to press it into place with just the right amount of pressure without it then slipping right back out of place. Once they're both on, they look quite mudguardy, I think you'll agree. Next comes this, I don't know what it is. Some sort of triangular shaped box thing? Is it some sort of muffler or fuel tank or just a random bit of stowage? Someone knows, and that someone is not likely to be me. Either way, the part has a guide pin which helps a lot. Nudging and glue gets it into its final position quite easily. Next comes the headlamp, which is a pretty small fiddly part, but not too hard to get into place. You've just got to do a bit of nudging to get it into the right spot. Near that, on the left front mudguard, goes this flag thing. I don't think this is actually a flag, but maybe it's some sort of holder for some kind of sign or placard or something. This is easy enough to get into place neatly. Just be careful not to bump it out of place after you've got it on, of course. Then I add the other headlamp and mudguards on the right-hand side. Other than the antenna, the hull is now completed and the turret can be attached. This was actually kind of difficult to get into place. The fit was tight and stiff, though in the end that's fine. Once the antenna is installed, this turret won't be rotatable or removable. Now it's time for the radio antenna. This is actually a little bit more simple to install than I was initially expecting, which is of course a good thing. I start by gluing these 2 supports to the sides of the hull towards the rear, like so. I'm trying to get them lined up with each other as best I can. There's nothing to guide these into place, so you'll just have to eyeball them. I was using the painting guide on the box as a kind of reference for where these should be. Then comes the antenna part itself, which I guess you could also use to hang clothes on to dry. If you were watching the stream where I built this, you'll know that I broke this part in half by gently bumping it, which was kind of annoying. Fortunately, it has gone back together pretty seamlessly. They're a bit hard to see, but there's 2 holes towards the front of this part into which a couple of poles will mount. These aren't too hard to get into place, though do be careful. These are angled at the bottom where they'll connect with the turret. If you get those angles right, and the poles on nice and straight, you shouldn't encounter any issues installing this antenna. I drop it onto the vehicle, and nudge it until it looks like it's sitting in the right place, and then I add glue. I also gently apply pressure with my knife, though not too much because I obviously don't want to break it again. I then add glue where the forward support poles contact the turret. Simple. The final part is this big chonky antenna thing which doesn't seem like it's meant to contact the rest of the antenna. I slip this into place with my tweezers, make sure that it's not all wonky, and then we're done. That's one Sd.Kfz 263 6rad radio vehicle in 72nd scale from first to fight completed. I think this is a pretty good little kit, and I'm quite happy with how it turned out, though it could still do with a little bit of extra cleanup where some of that flash was, and there is still a bit of a blemish on the turret that has to be dealt with. That's okay though, when you build yours, you'll be able to avoid the mistakes I made. It was an enjoyable little kit to put together. Having never built anything by first to fight, I wasn't quite sure what to expect, but I wasn't disappointed. The parts did need a bit of cleanup, but that's not really unusual, and they were neatly moulded and looked quite good. They also went together rather nicely. I didn't have to do any extra cutting or filing or anything like that to get the parts to go together. I think the addition of the metal gun barrel was a good one. Using the plastic gun would have forced me to try gluing it back together, and it almost certainly would have looked messy, though if the part was intact it would have looked good. So, overall, I think this is a pretty decent little kit, and it's reasonably well detailed. The moulded on tools and stuff look pretty good. I think it'll represent the 6Rad on your gaming table really nicely. I'm sure there are more finely detailed kits of this model available, but the thing to remember here is that this is intended as a gaming piece. That said, I would be a little bit concerned about that antenna, and I would certainly suggest that when you're using this model in your games that you handle it carefully. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments section below. That's where they go. If you've built one of these or any other cool models and you'd like to share, why not drop by our Discord community and show some pictures? That would be awesome. If you want to watch me build kits like this live on stream, head on over to my Twitch channel. The link is in the description below. And if you've not already done so, why not subscribe, follow, ring the bell, become a patron if you'd like to see my videos a bit early, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch. Links to all of my things are in the description below. And, as always, I shall return soon, so until then, be excellent to each other, have an awesome day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.